My husband falsely accused me of cheating after 10 years of marriage, called me a gold digger at a charity gala, and laughed while I was escorted out. 1 year later, when I was invited back as the keynote speaker, he was in the audience. "You don't deserve this stage," he whispered. I made sure he regretted showing up. When people ask me how it all started, I don't really know where to begin. Maybe it was the first time I caught him staring through me when I was talking. Or maybe it was when I stopped laughing at his sarcastic comments and started feeling embarrassed by them instead. But back then, I didn't see any of it as a red flag. I saw it as a man who was tired, stressed, overworked. I was making excuses for a marriage that, looking back now, had probably been breaking for a long time. I met Callan when I was 28. He was 31. We were both attending a charity event at the Four Seasons in Santa Barbara, he as a donor, me as a volunteer coordinator. I remember I had this job of setting up all the name tags at the tables and accidentally misspelled a councilwoman's last name. I was freaking out, trying to correct it with a Sharpie. He came over and made a joke about me personally destroying diplomacy in California, and I laughed. He was handsome, smart, effortlessly charming. The kind of man who walked into a room and made everyone feel like they already knew him. When he paid for an entire program expansion that night with one check, people clapped. I was just impressed he asked for my number quietly, without making a scene. He liked that I wasn't impressed by his money. I liked that he seemed to actually listen. Our first date was a bookstore and takeout Thai food. He asked about my work, really asked. I told him about growing up with a single mom in Bakersfield, watching her pick up graveyard shifts at the hospital just so we could keep the lights on. I told him how I worked 3 jobs to get through college and ended up in social work not because it paid well, God, no, but because I needed to give other women the kind of support my mom never had. He said, "That's the most honest thing anyone's told me in years." I fell in love with him slowly. Not because he swept me off my feet, but because he made it feel like I could finally put my feet down and rest. We got married 2 years later in a small garden behind a church in Santa Barbara. It wasn't extravagant, and he was okay with that. At least, I thought he was. In hindsight, I remember how he rolled his eyes when I told the caterer we didn't need filet mignon for 60 people. "It's just one day," I said. "We have a whole life to build." And we did build one. For 10 years. We moved into a house near Mission Canyon. I started directing a small nonprofit that provided mental health services to low-income women. He moved firms and climbed fast. He liked bringing me to his corporate events and introducing me as the heart of the family. We didn't have children, though I wanted them. He said, "Soon. When work slows down." But work never did. Still, I believed we were happy. Until the night that everything crashed. It was our 10th gala together, the biggest one yet. I'd been planning it for months, securing major donors, partnering with local politicians, booking the Ritz-Carlton in Santa Barbara, which gave us a huge discount because they supported the cause. I picked out my dress with Callan. He said he loved the deep green because it made me look like a forest. That night, I felt like I had actually done something, built something real. People hugged me as they arrived. One of our program graduates told me she'd gotten her kids back after leaving her abusive partner and completing our 6-month recovery program. Another told me she had started college. And then Callan pulled me aside, in front of the drink table, right as I was about to go on stage. He held up his phone. His hand was shaking a little, but his face was cold. "Want to explain this?" I looked down. Texts. Screenshots of messages. Flirty. Intimate. With someone named Ian. "I don't know what this is," I said immediately. "This isn't me." His voice dropped so low I could barely hear him. "Don't lie to me." I knew something was off. "I knew you were too good to be true." I remember blinking at him, confused, not because I was hiding anything, but because I genuinely had no clue what I was looking at. The texts were fake. That much was obvious to me. But the way he stared at me, he'd already decided they were real. "I didn't write these," I whispered. He took a step back and looked at me like I was a stranger. "You're a goddamn gold digger. You only married me for the money. All this helping women crap was a front. I should have seen it." And then, he signaled to the security. Two suited men approached me like I was an active threat. I don't remember walking out. I don't remember what I said, if anything. All I remember is him laughing, quietly, under his breath, as I passed him, and hearing someone behind me whisper, "Oh my God, she cheated?" I never got to give my speech that night. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the floor of the tiny guest bedroom at my friend Myra's house. She was the only one who picked up when I called, and stared at the emerald gown pulled around me like seaweed. My phone buzzed nonstop for the first few hours. Board members. Volunteers. One of the donors who had always flirted a little too comfortably in emails. Then nothing. Silence. Callan didn't call. Not to explain. Not to apologize. Not to fight. Just nothing. Within 48 hours, I was removed from the nonprofit's leadership page. A temporary leave of absence was announced. The same people who used to thank me with flowers and spa certificates when we hit donation goals suddenly couldn't look me in the eye. People were deeply concerned. Some prayed for me. Others forwarded me links to crisis counselors like I was a ticking BMB. I stayed off social media. I didn't want to see the pictures. I knew they'd be there, Callan charming donors, laughing with city council members, probably telling his version of events with the same polished smirk he wore like cologne. He always knew how to twist a story to make himself the hero. He had a gift for it. The divorce papers came a week later. Served to Myra's house, like I was squatting there. The reason listed? Irreconcilable differences due to infidelity. I wanted to scream. Not because I was surprised, but because I wasn't. This was all part of something I hadn't wanted to see. Callan wasn't leaving me because he thought I cheated. He was leaving me because he needed me to be the bad guy. Because after 10 years of marriage, I had no prenup, no lawyer, no clue just how ruthless the man I married could be when money was involved. And apparently, he didn't want to split a damn thing. The next few months felt like falling into a black hole in slow motion. Myra let me stay as long as I needed, but I moved out after 2 weeks. I found a studio apartment in Ventura above a nail salon, small and noisy, but it had a working shower and a window that faced the sunrise. I applied for jobs. Nothing fancy, just something to keep me moving. I ended up getting hired part-time at a women's shelter. It was a humbling reset. I'd gone from organizing black tie fundraisers with celebrity endorsements to folding donated clothes and cleaning out the fridge. But something about it felt real. Like going back to the beginning. Like dusting off the parts of me Callan couldn't touch. My lawyer, a no-nonsense woman named Jolene who had seen every kind of messy divorce imaginable, didn't flinch when I told her about the fake texts. "We'll need proof," she said, tapping her pen on a legal pad. "And you better hope it's good." I hired a digital forensics expert named Bryson. I found him online after 2 late-night rabbit holes of reading about catfishing and spoofing apps. He was quiet, nerdy, and borderline robotic in how he spoke, but he was good. 2 months. That's how long it took. "Ma'am," he said, standing in the middle of my living room with his laptop open. "These texts were manufactured using a third-party simulation app. The metadata shows manual edits. More importantly, the original files were accessed and sent from an IP address registered to your ex-husband's home." I remember just sitting there in shock. It wasn't just that he faked the affair. It was that he planned it, downloaded an app, crafted fake conversations, and timed it perfectly, just before the gala, the divorce filing, the property division. Everything. It was a campaign. Callan hadn't just wanted to leave me. He wanted to destroy me first. And for a while, I let him. But not anymore. Jolene filed a motion to amend the divorce proceedings. Callan tried to stall, of course. Denied everything. Blamed a friend for sending the screenshots as a joke. But the evidence was too clean, too traceable. He settled quietly. I got a fair share of the assets. The Santa Barbara house was sold. I got Winston back, our dog, who had been with him during the whole ordeal and who barked at him the moment I walked into the pickup exchange. That made me cry harder than anything else. But the real turning point didn't come with a court settlement or a check. It came on a Tuesday morning. I was sorting jackets at the shelter when my old assistant from the nonprofit, Delia, called me. Hey, she said, cautious. Please don't hang up. I wanted to say I'm sorry. We were wrong. I didn't say anything. There's more, she continued. The board, they know now. About everything. I think someone hired a PI. I don't know all the details. But they know. That's when she told me about the next gala. They want you to come back. Not just attend. Speak. Keynote speaker. I dropped the phone. I stared at my phone for a long time after that call. Part of me wanted to laugh. Another part wanted to hang up and never speak to anyone from that world again. But mostly, I felt nothing. It had been nearly a year since that night, since the stage, the whispers, the humiliation. Since my name was dragged out of my own life. And now they wanted me back? On that same stage? It almost felt like a trap. Delia tried to reassure me. The board knows, she repeated. There were internal emails. Apparently, someone overheard Callan bragging at a networking event, and one of the new donors is close friends with a forensic analyst. They traced everything. It's all being handled, I promise. This invitation is legit. They want you to tell your story. My story. It was funny, really. A year ago, I would have given anything to clear my name. Now? I wasn't sure I needed to anymore. I had a new job, a small but loyal circle of friends who knew the truth, and a quiet life that didn't involve RSVP lists or silk table runners. But part of me, the part that had built that nonprofit from nothing, that had poured 10 years into helping women who felt voiceless, wanted that mic back. So, I said yes. The next few weeks were a blur of preparation. They offered to put me up at a hotel in Santa Barbara, but I declined. I wasn't there for the perks. I rented a car, packed a bag, and brought Winston with me. He hated long drives, but something about his quiet presence reminded me I wasn't walking into this alone. When I arrived at the venue, the same ballroom, the same glittering chandeliers, the same soft jazz humming through the speakers, I froze at the door. For a moment, it felt like no time had passed. Like I was about to be pulled aside again, accused, stripped of everything I was. But no one looked at me with suspicion this time. Just recognition. And, oddly, respect. Delia met me at the entrance. She looked the same, maybe a little older, more tired, but she hugged me like we hadn't spent a year apart. We've missed you, she said, and this time, I could tell she meant it. I stayed mostly behind the scenes until it was time to speak. I didn't mingle. I didn't want to. My hands were steady, but my chest felt like a drum. Then I saw him. Callan. He was standing near the back of the ballroom, in a dark blue suit I recognized. He used to wear it to board meetings. His hair was shorter. His face was more drawn. But he was unmistakable. Our eyes locked for half a second. And that was it. He didn't nod. Didn't wave. Just stood there, unreadable. I kept walking. The MC introduced me with a warmth I wasn't expecting. She talked about my work, my contributions, and how the foundation was stronger today because of the integrity and resilience of the women who built it. People clapped. I walked on stage and adjusted the microphone. And then, as I looked down, Callan stepped forward, slowly making his way to the front of the room. He didn't shout. Didn't cause a scene. Just leaned against the wall near the stage, close enough for me to hear when he said, "You don't deserve this stage." I didn't flinch. I didn't look at him. I smiled. Not at him, but at the sea of people waiting. And I began. I didn't tell them everything. Not at first. I spoke about community. About how easy it is to let someone else tell your story when you don't have the mic. About the women we serve, how many of them were silenced, dismissed, erased, and how familiar that silence had become to me. I could feel the room leaning in. I talked about betrayal. Not just by people we love, but by institutions. Boards. Employers. Friends who stay silent. And then I paused. I was accused of something I didn't do, I said quietly. By someone I trusted for a decade. And for a while, I let that define me. I disappeared. But the truth has a way of resurfacing. Sometimes it takes time. Sometimes it takes pain. But it comes. The silence in that room was deafening. I looked at Callan then, just for a moment. He wasn't smiling. And then I turned back to the audience. I could see faces changing as I spoke. Some people looked uncomfortable, others frozen, locked into whatever memory my words stirred in them. I didn't name names. I didn't need to. The story was mine, but the pain? That part was universal. People knew. You could feel it in the air, how personal truth wraps itself around a room and squeezes, word by word. I kept going. I was escorted out of this very ballroom last year. Some of you were here. Some of you watched. Some whispered. Some said nothing at all. I don't blame you. That's what we're taught to do, look away when things get uncomfortable. To assume silence equals guilt. I let that sink in for a moment. But the real tragedy isn't that I was accused. It's that I almost let myself believe I didn't deserve to come back. There were a few sharp inhales. A glass clinked quietly in the back. But the room remained silent. I've spent my life helping women find their voice after trauma, after abandonment, after being told they were too difficult, too emotional, too angry. But it wasn't until I was standing outside this building, with everything I had built torn away in a second, that I realized, my story matters, too. Someone stood. It was one of the older donors, Mrs. Callahan. She had sat on the board for 15 years and rarely showed emotion, let alone stood up mid-speech. She didn't say anything. Just stood there, nodding. Then another. And another. It wasn't a standing ovation. Not yet. But it felt like one. Not loud. Not performative. Just people saying, "I hear you. I believe you. I'm sorry." I didn't cry. I thought I would, but I didn't. There was something almost peaceful about it, like I had finally exhaled after holding my breath for a year. And Callan? He was still there, arms crossed, shoulders slightly hunched. His expression unreadable, but I noticed his jaw tightened. His eyes darted to the side when mine met his. For the first time since I'd known him, he looked small. I wrapped up my speech with a quiet thank you. No grand ending. No dramatic call-out. I just stepped off the stage and walked straight past him, toward the back of the ballroom. "Nice speech," he muttered under his breath, without looking at me. I didn't stop walking. I didn't stay for dinner. Delia offered to sit with me, but I declined. I needed air. I needed to be far from that space for a while. I walked along the beach outside the hotel instead, heels in one hand, Winston's leash in the other. He padded alongside me, head low, nose twitching as we passed a couple on a late evening stroll. The wind off the Pacific felt colder than I remembered. Or maybe I'd just grown used to warmer air. Quieter nights. My phone buzzed. Messages started rolling in. "I'm sorry I believed him. You didn't deserve that. Thank you for being brave. I had no idea. He fooled all of us." I didn't answer any of them. Not yet. Maybe not ever. It wasn't about forgiveness for me, not anymore. It was about reclaiming space. Breathing the same air again without it choking me. Later that evening, I returned to the hotel briefly to collect my things. My name was still on the itinerary handouts. My seat at table 4 was untouched. The name card just read, Cameron Lively, founder, advocate, survivor. I stared at it for a while, then quietly folded it and tucked it into my purse. I was halfway to the parking garage when I heard footsteps behind me. I didn't have to turn around to know it was him. Cameron, Callan said. Not loudly. Not angry. Just tired. I kept walking. Can we talk for a second? I stopped. Turned. He looked like someone who had lost a game he didn't realize he was playing until it was too late. I don't expect forgiveness, he said. But no, I interrupted, flatly. You don't get this conversation. Not anymore. He looked like he wanted to say something else. Maybe apologize. Maybe lie again. Maybe beg. Instead, he just nodded. I lost everything, he murmured. I didn't say anything. Because here's the thing, he didn't lose it. He threw it away. And I wasn't going to be the one to help him pick up the pieces. I walked away from Callan that night and didn't look back, not once. I didn't need to. That conversation, what little of it he managed to squeeze out, wasn't closure. Closure happened the moment I stood on that stage and spoke my truth into a microphone he once tried to silence me with. That was the justice. That was the moment his power over me evaporated. Still, part of me wanted more. Not violence. Not cruelty. But accountability. The kind of revenge that doesn't need to be screamed or served cold. The kind that simmers until the moment is right and everyone sees it unfold. I didn't need to lift a single finger. The fallout came fast. 2 days after the gala, I got an email from a reporter at the Santa Barbara Independent. They were writing a piece about the recent financial shakeup at Callan's firm. Apparently, someone had leaked internal documents showing discrepancies in campaign donations and questionable bonuses. Not illegal, but shady enough to warrant an internal audit. And guess whose name was in every email chain? Callan. The story wasn't about me. It wasn't even about the texts. But it painted a broader picture, one of manipulation, ethical misconduct, and a man who got caught believing he'd never be questioned. Turns out, the board members who rehired me had also quietly cut all financial ties with him. His donations were politely returned. His firm, trying desperately to save face, suspended him pending investigation. I didn't comment for the article. I didn't need to. 3 months later, I was invited to speak on a panel in San Diego alongside 3 other women in nonprofit leadership who had faced public shaming, sabotage, and professional retaliation. The room was full of lawyers, donors, activists. Some of them had Googled me. They knew the story. I told it in full. No bitterness. Just facts. Just lessons. How I learned that silence is never the right choice when you know the truth. How I built something real from nothing and watched it be burned down, and how I rebuilt it stronger. After the panel, a woman approached me. Gray streak in her hair, soft blue blouse, gold-rimmed glasses. I was on your husband's firm's board, she said. Briefly. I just wanted you to know, you're not the only one. I didn't ask what she meant. I didn't need to. Back in Ventura, life got quieter. Calmer. I kept working at the women's shelter part-time, but started building something new on the side. It began with a podcast. Just me, a microphone, and stories from women like me. Women who lost everything, jobs, marriages, reputations, because of someone else's lies. It wasn't flashy. But it was real. And it grew. Then came the book deal. Then came the TEDx invitation. Then came the nonprofit grant, large enough to launch my own foundation, one focused on rebuilding lives after reputational torment. The first donor? Mrs. Callahan. The second? Delia. The third? The same councilwoman whose name I once misspelled on a tag at the very first gala I ever worked. As for Callan, I heard bits and pieces. He moved to Los Angeles. Tried launching a consulting firm. Didn't last. Got divorced from the new girlfriend 6 months in. His name occasionally popped up on forums for corporate fraud cases, usually followed by allegedly. But what got me, what truly sealed it for me, happened nearly a year after that final gala. I got an envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside, a glossy brochure from a new startup nonprofit focused on financial literacy for women. And scribbled in pen across the front, "You inspired this. I'm sorry I didn't stand up for you. I'm standing now." No signature. Just that. That's when I knew the revenge was complete. Not because he suffered, but because I survived. And thrived. And turned his attempt to bury me into a platform that gave others their voice. He gave me a stage when he tried to tear mine down. And I made damn sure he'd never be able to stand on it again. "So yeah," he whispered, "you don't deserve this stage." And I made sure he saw exactly why I do. Not through yelling. Not through destruction. But through becoming everything he said I could never be, without him. And that, my friends, is what I call poetic justice.